For this year's March Mystery Madness, there are 3 official prompts, and those are all to do with kind of internationalism and travel. While I do have at least one book on my TBR this month for each of those prompts, I'm actually going to be challenging myself to do something a little bit different as well, and that is to really focus in on some queer representation in my mysteries. I really don't feel like we get enough queer mysteries, specifically and especially queer mysteries from queer authors. I have 3 books that are set in a country not my own. 2 of those have really heavy travel aspects to them. So overall, I think this is a good way of combining my own goals for the month with the official readathon. 3 of these guys are new to me authors and 1 is an auto-buy. So if you have any other favourite queer authors, especially queer mystery writers, then let me know those in the comments because I'm always desperate to add more of those to my TBR list. The first book that I've decided to pick up is A Murder Most Camp by Nicolas DiDomizio. This one is coming out soon, so I really wanted to get that arc read. It's about a summer camp, so I could use that in this kind of chilly, wet spring that we're having. The protagonist for the story is Mikey. He is the heir to, I guess, like a grocery store empire. He's fast approaching 30 and his father has decided that Mikey has been wasting money, wasting his potential, that if Mikey wants full access to his trust fund on his 30th birthday, he has to spend the next 4 months doing something good, some kind of good deed, something that benefits someone other than himself. One of Mikey's cohorts from school, Sierra, so she's the same age as him, is also now married to his grandfather, and they have a daughter called Annabelle. So Annabelle is Mikey's aunt, but she's only 12 years old. And Sierra suggests that Mikey and Annabelle go off to a summer camp she once attended and that Mikey work there as a camp counsellor to do this almost community service that his father is stipulating. Once he gets to the camp, we get this real, the struggle between city boy and the wilderness. And we also get to see Mikey start to bond with Annabelle, who seems quite shy and retiring herself. She's obsessed with thrillers, mystery novels, and she struggles to make friends in her day-to-day life because people make fun of her for her family dynamic. Her dad is in his 80s and her mum is in her 30s, and it's been hard. So Mikey agrees that while they're at camp, all they'll tell people is that he's her uncle, so the opposite way around, and it gives her a chance to have a normal childhood this summer. And seeing Annabelle and Mikey start to bond has been a real highlight of the book. The author's done a really good job on the characterisation of Mikey and to a lesser extent Annabelle here, because by all rights Mikey especially should be very unlikable. He is spoiled, he's quite self-obsessed, he's quite careless with other people's feelings, and he tends to look down on the camp as a whole. I don't think he looks down on people, but he certainly has a certain out-of-touchness and a certain entitlement to him. But DiDomizio makes this, kind of softens it by giving Mikey, the usual tragic backstory. In this case, it's that Mikey's mother died when he was young. And also by giving him a kind of unfulfilled hopes and dreams. That's there where he connects with Annabelle. The idea that she loves mysteries, he loves movies, there's a cold case at camp. Why don't they and the other campers that Annabelle's made friends with all create essentially a real life cold case documentary? And I think that combination of Mikey's disappointing life so far, his failed dreams, and the connection he has to his aunt niece really helps gloss over all those kind of maybe less attractive character traits. And you do want him to succeed in his investigation, in proving his father wrong, in surviving the wilderness he's thrown himself into. It just adds that element of vulnerability that makes him more relatable. The case we're investigating is a 20-year-old mystery about one of the camp's counsellors, Rose, who goes missing one night and is never heard from again. It turns out she has maybe been blackmailing the camp's director over something, but we don't really know any details so far. That's maybe the only flaw I've found in the book up to this halfway mark, is that the details, the initial details when we first learn about Rose's disappearance, it feels a little bit spoon-fed to us, We investigate the cabin, we find diary entries, and that diary entry is Rose just breaking down everything that's happened up till then. Between that and the other kind of campers talking to Mikey about the mysterious case of Rose's disappearance, it feels a little exposition heavy, but I'm willing to go along with that. I'm hoping that that'll feel a little bit smoother. We did have to find out that information, and I suppose a diary entry is a nice way of giving us a really solid grounding in who Rose is before she disappears. I just wish it had maybe been delivered a little bit more sparingly, maybe from a few other sources. But she talks about how she's blackmailing the camp director with his secret, but then mentions that it's also her secret. So I'm thinking maybe some kind of illegitimate child or, you know, family squabble. And that would kind of echo nicely with the fact that we have Mikey and his family woes, Annabelle and her family dynamic, the two of them coming together to solve this case, to learn from each other, to grow, while Rose, clearly it didn't go brilliantly. I'm intrigued and I'm interested and I'm really enjoying the book so far. I have finished A Murder Most Camp and I had such a good time with this one. The romance to mystery ratio that is sold in the blurb that I read felt like it was gonna be kind of 50-50, and I have to say that that is the one place it didn't let me down, but it didn't quite match what I had expected. I did really enjoy the romance. I thought it was very sweet, and the love interest Jackson he's charming, but he does feel a little bit of a 2D cutout. He's not as fleshed out as I might have wanted if I was really considering this as a romance, where instead I think if this is more a cozy mystery, then the level of characterization in Jackson makes a lot more sense. For me, the real focus wasn't the romance anyway, and to be honest, it wasn't even the mystery. The mystery is relatively slow up to about the 75% mark, and then things really ratchet up. We are delivered a good number of potential suspects, a good number of red herring investigation threads, and Mikey does do a bit of digging around. There is a very clear sense of danger as we go into the final act, but I still didn't feel like there was a huge amount of investigating and sleuthing and mystery. What I really felt that this one did and did well, and where it shone, was in the growth of Mikey as a character. He goes on such a journey in this book without really changing. It's more that he finds what's inside him already. And that development he does himself is partly, or is very largely, pushed by his desire to be better, his desire to bond with Annabelle. And then vice versa, that relationship with Annabelle propels a lot of his character's growth. I loved the relationship between the two of them, the kind of agreement where, although Mikey's Annabelle's grandnephew, no, she's his aunt. She's his aunt. And they agree that she is going to say that he's her uncle, so that, you know, the kids think that she's normal. And that was a really nice setup between the two of them, because it really gave you a sense of vulnerability on both characters that I think they needed. And I loved the way it was crafted. I loved Mikey as a character. There was a lot of pop culture references, that very sassy gay guy caricature. Lots of references to 90s especially pop culture. We had references to the Gilmore Girls, we had references to Clueless, a lot of Clueless references, some Titanic references, all the big pop culture moments that fit into kind of queer communities. And I actually thought this was a smart choice, because quite often when a book does lean heavily into the pop culture references, even if that works for you in the moment, and quite often I enjoy that, it dates the book so quickly. And I think it was a really smart choice to give Mikey that obsession with filmmaking, specifically his obsession with kind of older films. Because we are talking about things that are already 30 years old, the author has to give us context clues so that the characters that Mikey's talking to get the references. And I think that that means that it won't age as badly, because those clues will always be in the book. Mikey will always have been making dated jokes that make other characters roll their eyes as he quotes Sheriff from Clueless for the 5th time, whereas if it was TV that is happening now and the other characters weren't reacting that way, the reader might have to, because they'd be like, why are we talking about this show that's 5 years old? Whereas movies that are 30 years old, everyone's kind of reacting in that way. I don't know if that makes sense, but I do think it was a smart choice. By the time we got to the end of the book, I did suspect the killer, I think around about the 80% mark, but not in a bad way where I'm thinking they haven't had enough distraction or enough false starts, and not where you're sitting from the very beginning of the book going, I don't even see why we're doing this journey because I know who it is. It was more, I've followed along the clues, I have my kind of suspicions, and now I'm quite interested and intrigued to see if I got it right. And I think personally that's where I like a mystery to fall, especially with cozies or golden age mysteries. I don't like if from page 1, from the moment a character's introduced, you go, that's him, that's the killer, from start to finish. Why did I bother reading this story? But at the same time, I would rather know the killer round about the beginning of the 3rd act than be completely surprised on the reveal page because there's been no clues that have pointed me to that. I want that kind of golden age rule where the clues should all be laid out for the reader. So in theory, if you're paying attention to the book, without doing a huge amount of note-taking or analysis, you should at least have a couple of suspects. And I think that hit this really well. I was just starting to go, I wonder if it's as then the clues that it was that person started to ratchet up, and then we got the reveal and I was able to be like, I was right, rather than, oh, that doesn't make sense, or I think this hit just that sweet spot of laying out all the clues for us to follow but not whipping the rug out at the end. It was a nice balance. It was a good mystery. The cold case side of it maybe meant that there wasn't the urgency you would have got if this was a crime that was being investigated now. But as I said, because so much of the book was about Mikey's growth and development, building his relationship, especially with Annabelle, I don't know that I needed that real drive of danger. The danger was in what if he loses his inheritance, and then what if he and Annabelle don't come out of this having bonded? What if he fails her? The point of being there is for her to make friends, for her to feel like a normal teenager, and he's more worried about losing that. He's worried about if his investigation endangers Jackson's job or the camp. So even though there wasn't that immediacy of we need to find the killer, the cold case did still have kind of immediate repercussions before we even got to the what if the killer is hunting me down aspect. It reminded me a lot of ways in some of my favourite gay authors who write romance and mystery elements in some of their books. Alexis Hall and Ev A.C. Rosen both do queer books, and both in some of their books have mysteries, and they're both auto-buy authors for me. So I think it's fairly safe to say that I'm going to be looking up this author in the future. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for what books he does next. I thought this was a fun one. I would definitely read more contemporary mysteries from him in the future. Jumping from a male contemporary, we're going to go on to a sapphic contemporary with A Slice of Mystery by Sophie Maddon. This one is very short, which does make me a little bit apprehensive. It's clocking in, according to Storygraph, just about the 230 page mark, so I'm not convinced that there will be enough time to fully flesh out a mystery and build a romance at the same time, but I'm very here for a sapphic cozy. I don't think I've ever seen one before. If you have, let me know. Definitely going on the TBR. But this might be new to me, so I'm very excited about that. In this, we're following Abigail. She is a sort of tech consultant. She goes into other companies and I guess assesses and finagles and rehauls their processes so that when she leaves, the company runs better. That's all a little loosey-goosey, and I'll be honest, I didn't fully understand that, or at least I don't at the moment. I'm not that far into it. But Abigail's doing that when her line manager, her boss, hauls her in and basically tells her that she has received this very strange letter that contains a threat in it. It's unsigned, it's unaddressed, there's a strange symbol on it. She's heard that Abigail has a bit of a Sherlock Holmes thing. She's quite meticulous. She likes to know things, and she wants Abigail to find out who has been sending the letters and to make them stop without involving the police. So there's, again, with this one, the stakes don't feel as high as they could. We're not looking for, at the moment, any dead bodies. We're not looking for killers. We've got a kind of vague blackmail situation going on, but the blackmail situation isn't happening to our protagonist, and it's not even happening to someone that she particularly likes. So I don't know that there's a sense of urgency to find the mystery, but I'm enjoying the time we're spending with Abigail. She's quite interesting as a character. She's very, very socially awkward, and that seems to impact her both at home and in work. We see her reactions with her co-workers. There's been some complaints made about her that she has maybe flagged her co-workers' flaws in front of clients when she should have. There's, I think, as well as the socially awkward, there's very strong hints that maybe Abigail has some autism going on, but that's not been written in the text so far. I've been enjoying seeing her ways of doing things, her routines, and how they impact what I imagine is quite a people-focused job. It's really interesting that she's so good at this job that really does involve getting to know people and getting to know their problems so that she can solve them. And I think when she finds her niche, when she finds her way into this investigation, that's going to really help her. She's very analytical by the sounds of it, and she's used to listening to people, whether or not she responds to that the way they expect. So I think she could be a really good detective, and we do get constant references to Sherlock Holmes, so again, that's making me think that there is some autism rep here. It's an unusual setting that I don't think I've ever seen before. It's very, very corporate. Abigail really, she has a best friend that she hangs out with in the evening sometimes. She has a cat that's mentioned, but a lot of her life seems to revolve around this big corporate job that she has. Cozies, I find, so often are set in very small towns. They're very, apart from the murder, about relaxing. They're very idyllic. And this is very much not that. There's lots of team dynamics, lots of infighting and backstabbing. And I'm interested to see how that all plays out and what the overall vibe of the book ends up being. I finished A Slice of Mystery, and I think I had pretty much the experience I was expecting from it. It felt a little bit short and a little bit underdeveloped. Funnily enough, for it being the second book in this log, it had also the same problem that I had with Murder Most Camp. The mystery element in both these books has been secondary to other elements. In Murder Most Camp, we had Mikey's personal growth and his relationship with Annabelle. In this one, we have Abigail's struggles to connect with people socially. I still think there's some neurodivergence rep here, although as far as I caught, there's no labels or diagnoses actually mentioned. And then obviously when the mystery kicks off, it's all revolving around her boss, Lynn, and the extra workload that she gets becomes part of the story. The investigation to me felt minor. It felt more like we were dealing with Abigail as a person and a lot of her work life rather than investigating, which is fine. I did find it really interesting. I've never, I don't think, seen a cozy that had this kind of career. Usually we are seeing people that own bookshops or that are setting up their own B&B or little craft cafes, all very, I guess, usually there's something they've inherited, but there's a very, not necessarily middle class, but a very, you can afford to take on a passion project type of jobs, whereas this is something very corporate, and that was just a different protagonist than I'm used to seeing, and also maybe explains why she doesn't leap into the investigation so easily. She has an awful lot on her plate work-wise and doesn't have the control of it being her own business. I loved her as a character. I thought she was really interesting, and I really liked seeing the way she dealt with different situations, even things that weren't anything to do with the mystery. I liked her prepping her lunches for the week and her logic behind doing that. I also liked the relationship that she had with her best friend and the relationship that develops between, I think, like a potential love interest, although neither the best friend or the love interest felt that they were raised to the level of being kind of like the sidekick or the backup character. Everyone apart from Abigail was a very kind of surface level sketch, and partly that's obviously to do with this having such a short word count. The mystery by the end of it was fine. It didn't blow me away. And I think that's ultimately what I would say of the book as well. But because I enjoyed Abigail as a character, I would be interested in trying a sequel in the series to see where it goes next. I'm willing to give the series another try to see more of her. I'm hoping that the next mystery I pick up is, you know, actually going to have some detective work in it. Fingers crossed. I have been sort of saving this one, not for a rainy day, but I have been hoarding it a little bit because I have really high expectations. So this is Mirage City by Lev A.C. Rosen. It is the 4th book, I think, in his Evander Mills books. The Evander Mills series are set in 1950s San Francisco, and we follow an ex-cop who has been outed and then becomes a private investigator, working largely on queer and queer community related cases. In the first one, Lavender House, we had an almost Agatha Christie locked room mystery, but featuring an entire household that was made up of lavender relationships. The second one had don't ask, don't tell, homophobia in the military angle, and the third one was to do with censorship and book bans. So they've all been really interesting, and we do see Andy making connections in that community. We see him overcoming his own internalized homophobia. He's been a cop for years and was in the closet. We start to see him branch out to take more to do with the community. I don't usually read historical cozies, but I loved Elsie Rosen's other books, and so I gave the series a chance, and that's totally paid off. It's definitely one of my favourites. This one I think is going to be a little bit different. It says in the blurb that instead of being based in San Francisco for this book, Andy is taking a road trip to LA to visit his mother. I'm guessing there's going to be quite a lot of family secrets revealed, maybe some tension there, and it sounds like there's a kind of underground queer rights movement happening that Andy's gonna somehow come into contact with. This might be the last book I get to in this vlog, but I also have another book on the back burner that is a NetGalley arc. I probably should read that one next because it does have a deadline, but this is what I'm gonna go with. I'm about halfway through Mirage City and I'm enjoying it every bit as much as I hoped I would. This definitely stands up to the very high expectations I had of this series. I also just feel like I really want to show you the end papers in this book because they really jump out at me. I don't know if it's just the colours, the way the contrast of the pinks and the blues just really works for me, but I also really love that within each of the little kind of posies of flowers there's like a little hidden element. We have blood on the leaves, the little rat just peeking its nose out, and that syringe kind of tied in. They're just really pretty. They're just really nice end papers that I just thought they were worth pointing out. As for the mystery itself, we are following Andy. He is firmly now, I think, established in his PI setup. He works above a queer nightclub. He is well known within the queer community for, I guess, the big cases that we have seen as readers, where he was, you know, really fighting injustices. But he's also been helping out in smaller ways. He essentially runs a kind of matchmaking service to sort out kind of lavender marriages. So if he has a queer woman and a queer man and they want to be able to function in 1950s society, then he matches them up, people that he thinks would work well together, and he helps them come up with their cover story, the history for their relationship, so that they can fake a straight relationship when they're out in the world. He's made a name for himself in the queer community that isn't where he started in the first book, when he was looked down upon, he was distrusted because he'd been a cop and he'd been closeted. He seems to now be really finding his feet, and so of course this book's gonna throw him through a loop. He's approached by a woman from the, I want to call it the Metacene Society, and these are basically queer people who, they want equality, but the way they see themselves achieving equality is by, I guess, being the straightest people they can be apart from their relationships. Like, they're very kind of anti-trans, they're very anti-butch lesbians, they're very anti-drag. They want to be kind of as normal as possible. It's an interesting take, and I can definitely imagine that that was, at one point, the campaign strategy. he agrees to take on the case where a few of their members have went missing. The current membership suspects the founders of the organisation because they were recently voted out for being, I guess, too queer. So Andy decides to take the case and follow the missing people from San Francisco to LA. And this is then when it kicks off a bit, because Andy's from LA, his mother's there, his past is there, and we're really getting to see how he's again a fish out of water. Although in the investigation itself he's very out, he's talking to queer people, he's very open about who he is. When he's with his mother, he's still in the closet, and we're getting to see how, I guess, he's grown since the first book, but how he's also unable to grow because of the time period he's in. He's convinced that if his mother finds out the slightest thing, she will despise him. He has quite a lot of internalized homophobia when he sees other relationships. This is a nice kind of change of pace that really gives him that kind of shaky footing again. Losing the support network he's built in San Francisco, which shows you how important it is to him over the past couple of books. When we started Lavender House, he was very much on his own as a character. Taking everyone away from him in this book shows how far he came in the kind of intervening novels. I am a little bit sad in this one that we don't get as many of our recurring characters. He's left them all behind, but we are getting quite a big cast of fresh characters, and in particular I'm really intrigued by Andy's mum. There's an interesting dynamic there where Andy's convinced she doesn't know that he's gay, but I have my suspicions that maybe she knows more than she's letting on, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. These books have been quite dark in places. In the first book especially, Rosen did not shy away from the kind of experiences that outed gay men might experience, especially Andy, who has been a cop. The series starts with a gay bashing and a considered suicide attempt, so they're definitely willing to go down that darker road. They're not living in a idealized or fictionalized 1950s. I'll be interested to see whether Andy's mum has known all along or whether she hasn't, but when he comes out, whether she embraces that, or whether we're going to go down a different route where either he is forced to keep lying to his mother or he comes out and she rejects him. This series, because of that tone, I feel like it could go any way, and I'm intrigued. I need to know more. So there's no real surprise here. This was a 5-star. I knew I loved the series, I know I love the author, and I had a great time with it. Honestly, I'll probably keep buying this series for as long as Rosen is interested. They are so unique and so interesting, and as a layperson, I feel like that historical element is always immaculately researched with enough creative liberty to create a really compelling story and delivered with confidence and in a way that ties into the characters he's created and kind of elevates the world building, elevates the way the characters interact with the world without feeling like we're bogged down in that history. It's a very, very fine line to walk, and I think a lot of mysteries get it wrong because they either, and not just mysteries, I guess historical fiction, either we get really, really caught up in the nitty gritty and it becomes a little disjointed, it becomes a little, it's harder to connect to the characters, or we play so fast and loose with the history that you're just like, in ye olden days, that could range from hoop skirts through to mini dresses. Whereas I think this gives you such a really, really good sense of time. It gives you a really, it feels really immersively like the 1950s. It's very well set up. The world building, that era is just impeccable. And it feeds into the storylines. It's relevant. The storylines always feel like they need to be set in this time period. It's not just a gloss. The story and the setting are interwoven beautifully, and that neither really works without the other, but it all feels kind of effortless, and it's just incredibly well delivered. I really hope that it did well enough that we get a 5th book in the series, because this I would happily read somewhere into the double digits. In particular on this one, I thought the ending was really well balanced. Andy gets to have his, his revelations, his hero moments, but it felt in keeping with the world we built. I did say that this skews a little bit darker sometimes, and I like that while Andy gets his wins, they're not fantastical. There's always just a little bit of a bittersweetness to them, where the world's not perfect yet, and I like that this played that line. The next book that I'm going to be picking up is Coastal Views to Die For by Sam Lumley, and this is the second book in the Oliver Pop mysteries. I have read the first one, which was something 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 DC. I have not, I don't remember it at all. I have a sense that it was quite frantic. It felt quite frantic, and because of the nature of the story, where it is a cozy mystery, but our protagonist is a travel writer and he is being sent in the first one to DC, there was a lot of things to do with politics in the story that then, because of that kind of frantic nature and fast-paced and hopping from location to location, and the content being political, it felt somewhere like a thriller, but it was also trying to be a cozy, and I just didn't feel like it really hit either camp brilliantly, and it kind of just ended up in a meh moment for me. But it has a gay protagonist and autism rep. In this one, he is going off to, I think it was Oregon, to road trip with, I think, the potential love interest from the last book, but it might be someone new. But he's going off on a kind of a road trip for an assignment that is about finding, you know, romantic moments, romantic settings along this whatever kind of winding trail they're going to drive along. So I'm really excited about it, whereas I kind of came out of the last book, the first book, just writing the series off as like it's not for me. But also I love a road trip book, and I love the way you get to see all these little places. I love the way you get to really, especially with American road trip books, that kind of, it's probably idealized Americana that doesn't really exist, but like I eat that up. So I'm hoping this one's gonna work. The idea of coastal views and a romantic trip sounds much more calm, much more placid. I think that is what I wanted from the first one, and that political intrigue darting around the city didn't work for me in this genre. But I have hopes that this book will kind of counter-correct that and will work out for me. I hope. Coastal Views to Die For completely surprised me in the best possible way. And quite honestly, I just was thinking of this partly as a second chance for, you know, redemption, and partly as a standalone entirely on its own, because my memory is not so good. But this actually blew me away. I think I rated the last one somewhere like a 3 because it was fine, and I felt bad rating it any lower, but realistically, since I had so few feelings on it, it should probably have been somewhere more like a 2. This one is definitely more in the 4 to 4.5 star range. I had thought it was going to be about a road trip, and I was loving the idea of a mystery on I don't know how you do a mystery on a road trip, because suspects and everything would move. Anyway, I thought it was going to be a road trip, and it does have a little bit of a road trip angle. They travel to, I'd call it a B&B, some kind of family-run, small, niche-y hotel that is ran by the Rose family. And from that location, they do a little bit of sightseeing, which I really enjoyed. But by and large, we are set within this very inside the hotel, because when the hotel is booked out, so there's only one bedroom, but also every single member that is staying in the hotel is a relative of the hotel owners. There's been a recent reunion, and the kind of matriarch, the grandmother of the family, has got back in touch with her estranged daughter. She is now considering whether she's going to make any changes to her will. And then a body drops from the balcony into our protagonist's hot tub. There's lots of family secrets going on, affairs and relationships and scandals, and lots to do with who and how grandmama is going to distribute, or if she's going to redistribute her wealth upon her death. In that sense, it had a very kind of modern Agatha Christie feel to it. We were really focused in on one family, their myriad of kind of interconnected dramas. We were in this kind of hotel, which I guess substitutes for maybe one of these big manor houses if this was a Christie novel. And although I didn't get the road trip I was expecting and kind of looking forward to, this, you know, family drama in an isolated location that's a little bit like Agatha Christie is one of my other favourite mystery tropes. So I didn't really have any problem with switching it up, and I really enjoyed what we did get. There are a lot of characters at the start. There are a lot of characters that are related to one another. There are a lot of characters with very similar names. And it's quite a big cast, so it did take me a little bit to find my footing, to start to mentally differentiate all the different suspects from each other. But once I got the ball rolling on it, I was having a great time. I did love the fake dating trope that this was playing with, but we knew that I would. I really enjoyed seeing Oliver and Ricky. So Oliver's the travel writer, Ricky is the photographer. I really enjoyed them testing out new locations that might feature in the article. We got to see them visiting a dairy farm, where Oliver desperately tried to understand what might possibly make cheese sexy, and we could come up with no scenarios. But then we also got to see them at a spa doing a couples massage, and again Oliver maybe struggled with that one a bit. We got to see them traveling to kind of little local cafes, exploring the hotel, the nearby surroundings, driving lessons as Ricky tries to teach Oliver to drive. It lent itself really well to having those really coupley moments, but because we were still kind of denial stage about this fake dating relationship being fake and not a genuine connection, it took away some of the maybe potentially overly sweet aspects. It just kept pulling us back into the reality of it, and I think that was a really nice balance, so we didn't feel like it was jumping into, you know, an insta love type of situation, because the two of them were the love interests in the first book, but it's supposed to be that they've not seen each other since then. So I liked that use of the fake dating trope to give us all those romantic moments, that kind of immediate intimacy between them, without actually feeling like we were just diving into a pre-established relationship or, you know, jumping the gun on all the will they won't they tension. It was a smart choice and I really liked it. I really loved that relationship. I thought Ricky and Oliver were great together. And overall, the romance felt like a really strong part of the book, which I enjoyed. But I think the mystery held up on its own too. And that was the issue I had with the first one. I think with that almost Agatha Christie-esque setting and kind of set up for the mystery, it fit the genre so much better. It felt more comfortable, it felt more confident in what it was doing. It wasn't trying to play different angles. And this just felt like a vast improvement in a sequel in a series. And I'm really hoping now that Lumley has another book in the series coming out, because I'm definitely going to pick that up if he does. It was an excellent second book. And that's the end of the books that I kind of earmarked for this Queer Detectives vlog. I do have another book, potentially another couple of books, to read for March Mystery Madness. I still want to hit that read a book translated from a language not your own prompt, and I think I'm going to try and do that with either Strange Pictures or Three Bags Full, or both, depending on what the library has. So I want to get to those at some point this month still, but for my queer detectives, my queer mysteries, I think we've hit a nice stopping point for the month. I had a really good experience with all the books. Some were a little bit more my speed than others. I knew that Mirage City, it would have had to do something terrible for me to dislike a book in that series, but I'm very happy that it, you know, exceeded my expectations. It made that 5-star. Coastal Views to Die For, probably the biggest surprise, because the other two I had no real expectations of. This one, it was definitely the underdog coming into the vlog. Let me know your thoughts on any of these books if you've read them, and if you've not, let me know any queer mysteries that you're interested in or have read. Otherwise, just leave me a magnifying glass in the comments to show you made it this far, and I'll see you in the next video.